Welcome back to the channel.
Welcome back. We are the Chuba Brothers. Today we're doing something a little bit different. Now our channel basically started with brewing.
We
We call it
the
ours.
Brewing Brothers.
Yes, and so we're just getting back to that a little bit here in the pipe studio. And so yeah, I got some ingredients here for what I like to say is one of the best autumn or fall drinks. Autumn if you're more sophisticated. But here we got some ingredients for the best autumn fermented beverage that I think that you could partake in. This is basically a blend between a cider, maple agave wine almost, like a maple agave wine.
Yeah, it feels like this is going to be more of a combination of things.
Yeah, and so basically the base of this brew is apple juice. Just normal store-bought $3 apple juice, but we have a gallon of it, so 2 of these. That'll be the base. We got some agave here, some blue agave nectar, organic.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with agave, it comes from Mexico. I have some things I've written down here, just in case, like I said, if you guys aren't familiar with what that is.
But before you get into that, I'm just going to start moving along here, and in the meantime you can go through that. So basically, just to start this off, I'm just going to I do have a scale here, and so I do just want to get a measurement of the only thing that I'm weighing is the agave. And so this is the fermentation bucket, and a lot of the links could probably be in the description if they're on Amazon, so go check that out. But you got just a normal lid with the airlock, yeah, and that'll go on top. So what we're going to do here is turn on the scale. Yeah, it's zeroed out. And then I'm just going to measure 1 pound of agave. Now this whole thing should be on the higher end of the alcohol spectrum, somewhere around 14%. And so I'll add a pound of this.
This is blue agave.
Yeah, so. And so agave, okay, just went over a pound a little bit. Agave is going to give it some, for those of you that have never tasted or tried agave or fermented agave wine.
Agave is in tequila.
It's like honey. It's a little bit lighter. Like it's real, honey wouldn't go in there that easily unless it was like hot, warm. But it's got a oakiness that would come from something like maple syrup. And I was thinking about I have a little bit of maple syrup left. I might add a little bit in. That's not really necessary here. But maple syrup, especially when fermented, gives an oakiness, basically from the tree that it came from. I'm talking about maple syrup. And agave kind of has like hints of maple syrup, just trying it raw. So got my 1 pound of agave nectar. And then I'm just going to add my 1 gallon of apple juice. And now this is going to give this entire thing vibes of Angry Orchard, basically. Hard ciders. And then so you can go through some of the facts there, as you were saying earlier with the agave.
No, just agave, yeah, agave. It's just what you make the tequila with. You distill it, like you ferment the agave. It's called nectar. You were trying to say you have honey thick, nectar thick, and then water. Like that's the consistency. Nectar is just between water and honey. It's a lot, as you can see, it would pour it a lot easier. So agave they use in tequila, and the only place you can find it is in Mexico and like the southern areas. And yeah, it's just a sap that comes from the agave plant, and it has I would say it's very close to honey, but not as potent as honey.
It's oakier for sure. So it has aspects of it that taste like maple syrup. So right now we have 1 gallon of apple juice, 1 pound of agave nectar, Now I'm going to be getting into the last little bit of sugar that I think I'm going to add, and that is brown sugar. And I'm going to add, and this is a 1 gallon batch, and this is a 2 gallon bucket. And so this is going to give it enough space in here that you can shake this every day, and it'll foam up, but it should never max out as long as I'm really stopping it around a gallon. So I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. And that's really, you could use white cane sugar, but this is just giving it more flavor.
Because there's cinnamon in it, that's what it is.
Well, there's no cinnamon in here.
Is this just brown sugar?
Well, brown sugar, yeah, comes from, what do they make rum out of? Molasses.
Yeah.
It's like sort of like molassesy sugar. So it kind of gets
has more flavor.
Some of those tastes to it. So I'm just going to do 2 tablespoons, and that's just going to increase the sugar content, because what we're going for here is just to get a good starting gravity reading. Starting gravity reading, for those of you that don't know that might be interested in brewing, it's sort of just like the original gravity, the starting gravity, the specific gravity, or the original gravity. All interchangeable terms, basically. And that just means how much sugar is in this liquid, and you're going to measure that throughout the process, because as you add the yeast eat it. And so that's how you know that. So the gravity should be going down as you're brewing, because the yeast are turning those sugars into alcohol. It's therefore, in the end, there should be no sugar in here. So you should get a gravity reading of basically 1, somewhere around 1.000. So right now we got the brown sugar added, and then so the sugar should be good. If you wanted to give this more qualities of like mead, so fermented honey, you would add honey as well. I'm not doing that. The one thing I am going to do, though, is once this is all done, within 3 weeks or so, and I stabilize, kill the yeast, then I'll add the honey. And that'll add the sweetness to this, and it'll give it more of a vibe of
it's probably more
mead.
doable for
So it'll be
people.
like a agave wine, mead, apple cider, the oakiness, especially when adding these. And this is a good autumn. You can add oranges too. I know oranges is a slight bit of orange is good in the fall. It pairs well with maple syrup. But now I'm going to focus on the tannins. Now this is just black tea. It's like, doesn't really matter the brand, like the type or the brand or whatever. This is Kenyan.
What's the point of adding?
This is for tannins.
Yeah. So what are tannins, and why would you add them to the mead or whatever?
So this is basically to give whatever you want to call this, a cider, a mead, a wine. It's to give this body. So you don't, whenever you're drinking any alcoholic beverage, you don't want it to go down as easy as water. I mean, maybe if you're drinking like a light beer, typically you want your wines, your meads, even cider to have some sort of body texture to it. And this does a lot of that. Also adds a little bit of flavor. But I'll be adding 1 teaspoon, not a tablespoon. And a lot of these, like the 3 of these, will be adding some tannic value. You could add wine tannins, but wine tannins don't add too much flavor in my opinion. So we're just going to add 1 teaspoon of that. Now we're going to get to the Meadowsweet. Did you go over Meadowsweet yet?
No. Meadowsweet, so it adds flavor. It's a natural sweetener, and it has medicinal properties. I mean, it adds. I don't know if it's gonna stay with the sugars turning to alcohol, and no one's really talked about if those medicinal properties actually stay. But the flavor of Meadowsweet, I've used it actually in an almond mead that I made, because it has hints of almonds. So if you actually smell that, and what I had at the end of mine, it actually has like more of an almond. I don't know what to say. Like almonds have like more of a. I think that's what adds the body to it. So it's just a natural sweetener, and it adds. That's why I think you should probably maybe put some honey in, because it says it adds to enhances the flavor of honey.
Well, I'll be putting honey in there for sure.
Okay.
In the secondary, but.
And the medicinal properties, it says it helps with it's an anti-inflammatory and like a pain relieving properties. And then that's Yarrow, which is my favorite. I made a Skyrim Mead, and that called for Yarrow, and that is one of the best smelling herbs there are. So Yarrow is, so the flavor of Yarrow is a unique herbal and slightly spicy flavor that adds to the meads, or whatever we want to call this, and it adds bitterness to it. So it actually, you don't want something too sweet, so adding bitterness equals it out to like you don't want something too bitter. So that's why a lot of brewers, they'll add hops to beer, because if you ever made beer, it's basically just straight sugar. So you want to add things that like even it out to like it's not too sweet and it's not too harsh on the tongue. And the aroma they have on here is just, it adds like an earthy aroma to it.
Yeah, so those are those two. I added 2 teaspoons each of that. And the final thing, and this does look pretty beautiful from up top.
I'll take a picture of it.
Yeah, but we got some Super Ferment. Now the Super Ferment is sort of like a yeast starter, basically, like an energizer. I don't know if it's technically an energizer, just Super Ferment.
Yeah.
It just helps the yeast get started and gives it those initial nutrients. So I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of that as well. And that should be it. Let me just go through my notes here. Other than the yeast, of course, which that process, I don't have like the water down here right now. I did leave a little bit of apple juice left because there's a whole process of starting yeast. That could probably be like a whole nother video.
Like introducing it to it?
Yeah, basically the process of the yeast. And for this one, I'm just going to use a Lalvin. I don't even know how to pronounce this, but it's the RC212. And I'm just going to use a half a packet. So I'm going to just use half of this.
Because you're doing half like...
Yeah.
You want to use one of those packs for 5 gallons.
Yeah, this will do 5 or 6 gallons. But for 1 gallon, you basically want to have about, I would suggest like a half a packet. I mean, this goes for like $4. So yeah. It's like...
You're not wasting much.
Yeah. And it's just going to go in there and it's going to form a colony of yeast. So it's going to grow significantly until it eats all the sugar. And then they'll just naturally fall to the bottom. And that's when you transfer all the good stuff out and you leave the crap on the bottom, which is called the lees. I think it's L-E-E-S. That's like the dead yeast and its waste, essentially. Mm-hmm. And then you just continue that process for a while. So yeah, at this point, I just have to add the yeast. The best way to start the yeast is to put it in water that is around 100 degrees, 90 to 100. You add it in there for a couple minutes and you just stir it. Then you introduce a little bit of sugar, which I would add a little bit of apple juice to that. And then stir that for another couple minutes and then just toss it right in here with the rest of it.
Yeah, because you want it to have something similar to what it's about to get into.
Yeah. Now, I've seen people just add it straight in.
It might take a while.
Yeah. Basically, most of the flavor of, not most, a lot of the flavor of any brew really comes down to the yeast. And yeast are very sensitive. So putting any strain on them whatsoever, even I've heard just sunlight coming through a glass jug, just like the sunlight itself could agitate them to where it gives off unfavorable esters, or fusules, I mean. I forget the terminology. And then, yeah, the different levels of heat. Now, every yeast is sort of made with its own temperature range that you want to keep it at. I'll look up this one, but there's more specific ones than others. I'll double check, but I'm sure I'll be fine at like 70 to 80 degrees. That's like a pretty safe spot. Now, if it was wintertime down here, I'd want to put a brew belt around this, plug that in to keep this at a certain temperature.
That's why
or take it upstairs or something.
Spring and autumn are usually the best times to brew because summer gets a little too hot, winter gets too cool down here.
Yeah. And so, the whole process that I just kind of described, it'll take a few minutes, and then I'll throw that in here. We're not going to record that in this video. And then basically, you would just want to stir this all up, place this on top with water in the airlock, about the halfway point, and then that will allow the carbon to come out and bubble out, but no oxygen can get back in. So this process will go on for about 3 weeks. And then that'll be on the next stage.
But you you don't want to put that on right now, though. You want to introduce as much oxygen as possible with that yeast.
Yeah, I've done it before where I left it on.
Maybe usually, like, I feel like we always push it to the side.
Yeah.
Slightly late on.
But there is an issue with, depending where you're from and what season it is, like if there's gnats down here, I don't want to get any, like I don't want one gnat to get in here. So typically I like to just have it secured, and then just every day I'll just take this off and just stir it, get as much oxygen in there as I can, and then just place it back on. What you could do is literally just don't snap it, but just kind of like lay it on there. I do that with wine. That's what I was suggested to do whenever I started in wine making, but that's basically the process. So this is called primary fermentation. And so in a future video, we can do the next stage of fermentation. We'll talk about secondary fermentation, and then the conditioning phase, bottling, the whole process. And we could do that all with this autumn drink here. And I'm not sure when we're going to post this, but that'll at least be like a month from now, because that'll involve me doing the whole process, videotaping, and then sending that out. So look for that. And if you're into any of this brewing stuff, if you're typically into the whole pipe smoking stuff and you want to do something different and get into some brewing, I highly suggest getting involved. It's a very cheap process. I mean, this 1 gallon of apple juice, it's like $3.50 each. And like if you just make like a cheap apple juice, that's like $6-7. You can basically make a gallon of like Angry Orchard.
Yeah, it's simple. Which
Angry Orchard goes pretty expensive. And so overall this process could save you money depending on what you want to make. Now mead, kind of a whole different story, because honey is the sugar involved there.
Honey's a little bit more expensive. But nothing's better than when you make a nice brewed, something that you did yourself, and you're smoking some nice homemade, like from a mom and pop shops, like tobacco. Nothing's better in the autumn than just sitting on your porch, drinking like a home craft, something you made, smoking like handmade, like handcrafted tobacco.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like these two go together perfectly.
Yeah, that's why we wanted them both on the channel. So that's all for this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Follow us on Instagram at the Chewy Brothers. Let us know in the comments if you have any questions or if you have anything to add, any suggestions for newbies.
Yeah, and check out, we'll put some of the links to our
all
Amazon.
this.
You can get all these products that we have here.
Yeah.
Peace.
See you in the next video.